Welcome back to another Waters Ironworks book review. Thank you guys so much for joining me this week. Last week we talked about the Master Mirror find and the amazing book that documents that entire find. Reading that book really got me into wanting to do more research and more understanding about Scandinavian blacksmithing, really dive into this, and a little bit of research and checking on Amazon, and I found Scandinavian Blacksmithing in the Iron Age, on the edge of the world. You could not have a better book title for what I was looking for. I bought the book, and the quality on it's pretty nice. And then I read the book, and I gave it 1 star. And if you're a beginner blacksmith, 0 stars. If you're advanced, 0 stars. If you want inspiration, 0 stars. Historical, 2 stars. It is a book with a great title, and it's not a bad book if you are looking for a discussion about the classification of grave finds in Scandinavian graves in the Viking period. If that is what you're interested in, and you're interested in what the latest thoughts are of archaeologists discussing whether or not particular graves should be considered blacksmith graves or other graves, then this is your book. I don't think that many people are looking for that book, unfortunately, which is why I've given it such a low rating. It's not that it's even not an interesting book, right? I'm not an expert in this area. There was a lot of reference and discussion about things that are I think I don't fully understand the full context of, right? There's references to other books and other discussions that I haven't read. But I did find that the author makes a pretty compelling case that if you're looking at graves in Scandinavia and you find a hammer saying, aha, this man was a blacksmith, that's maybe a bit of a stretch, and that seems to be the general kind of view. Is, hey, if we find a hammer, if we find files, if we find gouges, if we find these kind of wide variety of tools, and he goes through the tools. That part was pretty interesting. Then those are automatically classified as blacksmith graves. The point that the author makes through this is that there may not have even been kind of the concept of a blacksmith like we think it today, right? There might have been more of this craftsman sort of idea where somebody who does blacksmithing and woodworking and a wide variety of other skills, that might be a more accurate description of who they are, right? It's this sort of general craftsman. And so you see kind of these mixed tools for somebody who is a craftsman more than they are specifically a blacksmith. And so the idea of calling this grave just a blacksmith's grave is misleading to modern people, and you know, it's not the most useful classification. The other point that the author brings up, which I thought was very interesting, is you know, back in the time, working with fire, doing blacksmithing, or doing crafts had potentially a mythological or magical, certainly a status kind of symbology with them, right? The idea that you're making things, especially with blacksmithing, working with hot iron and fire, has always, historically, I won't say always, that's overly broad, but historically, frequently, you know, had kind of these magical properties that were associated with it in the past. And so you could have somebody who is wanting to be seen as a wise person, right? I'm a local lord. I've never done any crafting. All my money and everything comes from my control over a place of ground. But I want to be perceived as wise. And so when I'm buried, these tools that wise, crafty people use are included in my grave as a symbol of my wisdom. So there's also the possibility that, hey, here's a hammer in somebody's grave, that person's a blacksmith. Maybe not, right? Maybe it's a symbolic object that's being included in the grave. So that is really what this book is all about. There is a lot of detail about where these graves have been found in the different kind of Nordic countries, the types of objects that have been included in the grave sites, how many of each object. If you are into that, if that is really where your interest lies, then this book is going to serve you well. If you buy it like I did, thinking that, hey, the Mastermere find was great, I'm going to be able to buy this book about Scandinavian blacksmithing in the Iron Age on the edge of the world. Again, man, great title. And you're looking at this and you're like, I'm going to pull this book open and I'm going to find things like I did in the Mastermere book, where I can see artifacts, I can see their sizes, and reproduce those items. That is not what this book is. This is really a book for Scandinavian archaeologists who are interested in kind of this Iron Age period. So take that as it will. If it sounds interesting to you, then again, even with my low rating, it's not a bad book. It's not a book for your average blacksmith, though, which is really what my rating system goes on. Most blacksmiths, I don't think, are going to find this book very interesting. If you do want to know more about the state of archaeology in Scandinavia, I guess you probably have already heard about this book, and I'm not telling you anything new. But that's what the book is, so you can make up your own mind on whether to buy or pass. It is not a book that I would recommend for people who are interested in Iron Age blacksmithing. It really does have that archaeological bent. So thank you guys so much. If you'd like to see my full write-up on this, there'll be a link in the description, as well as a link to all my other book reviews and an affiliate link where you can buy this book if it has struck your interest. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and happy forging. We'll see you next week. Scandinavian blacksmithing. You won't believe what happened when we read this book. It was disappointing, and we were disappointed.